The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stood at the center of Unity Station, a massive structure that floated between three stars. Inside, representatives from 700 species gathered in their designated sections. The air hummed with translation devices working in real time, converting thousands of languages into understanding. Council Speaker Vornal, a tall being with blue crystalline skin, raised his four arms to call for silence. The chamber quieted immediately. Vornal had served as speaker for 300 years, and his word carried weight. The Catharn Empire petitions for full membership in the Concordat, Vornal announced. His voice echoed through the chamber. The Catharn delegation stood. They were impressive warriors, standing nearly 8 feet tall with thick armor-like skin and 4 eyes that could see in multiple spectrums. Their leader, Commander Zekthul, stepped forward with confidence. The Catharn controlled 200 star systems, Zekthul said, his voice deep and proud. We bring strength and resources to the Concordat. We have defeated all enemies in our region of space. We follow the laws of peace that govern this council. Murmurs of approval rippled through various delegations. The Catharn were powerful, and power meant safety in a vast galaxy. In the historian's gallery above the main floor, an old architect named Shenva watched the proceedings with concern. The architects were among the oldest species in the galaxy, beings made of living crystal that could survive for thousands of years. Shenva had lived for 4,000 years, and something about the Catharn bothered him. They remind me of the old stories, Shenva whispered to his assistant, a young human-like species called the Fenti. What stories, master? The assistant asked. The Terran parables, Shenva said quietly. Have you studied them? The assistant nodded. Every child learns them. The warnings about the extinct warrior race that conquered without wisdom. The cautionary tale about expansion without restraint. Yes, Shenva said. The sleepers, the Terrans. Though most believe they never existed. Just myths to teach younglings about the dangers of war. Down on the council floor, the vote proceeded. One by one, delegations approved the Catharn membership. It was nearly unanimous. Only the architects abstained, which surprised many representatives. After the session ended, Zekthul gathered with his military advisors in their private quarters aboard a Catharn warship. The council accepts us, Zekthul said with satisfaction. Now we can truly expand our influence. His second-in-command, a scarred warrior named Krell, pulled up a star chart. Commander, our scouts have found something unusual. A sealed star system in Sector 774. Ancient quarantine beacons surround it. The beacons are at least 10,000 years old. Zekthul studied the chart. What species placed the beacons? Unknown. The language on them is dead. Council records call it English. The system is called Sol. Why is it sealed? Krell shook his head. Council records say it is forbidden territory. Something about ancient dangers, but the scans show habitable world's resources. No active military presence. Zekthul's eyes gleamed. The council forbids it. They strongly advise against entering. Advise is not command, Zekthul said. Send a scout force. If there are resources in this Sol system, the Catharn Empire will claim them. 3 days later, a Catharn scout fleet of 15 ships approached the Sol system. The ancient quarantine beacons began broadcasting warnings in multiple languages, but none the Catharn could understand. The ships ignored the warnings and crossed the boundary. Immediately, sensors detected something unusual. A massive energy field surrounded the third planet from the sun. The field was sophisticated, far more advanced than anything the Catharn had seen. What kind of primitives build shields like that? Captain Vesh asked aboard the lead scout ship. Perhaps it is automatic, her scanner officer suggested. Ancient technology still running without operators. The ships moved deeper into the system. They passed the fourth planet, a red desert world with signs of ancient terraforming. They detected the remains of cities, all abandoned. The fifth planet, a gas giant, had dozens of moons, several showing signs of previous habitation. This system was heavily populated once, Vesh reported to Commander Zekthul, but it appears completely empty now. On Earth, deep beneath the surface, in a facility that had operated automatically for 10,000 years, something changed. Red lights that had been dark for millennia suddenly glowed to life. Computer systems that had been in sleep mode began processing information. The breach of the Sol system boundary triggered protocols established long ago. Across the planet, in hidden bunkers and underground cities, massive cryogenic facilities received the activation signal. On Mars, the same thing happened. In the underground colonies built into the planet's crust, lights flickered on. On Europa, beneath kilometers of ice, the colony's central computer woke from its long sleep. On Titan, in the domed cities that had withstood 10,000 years of Saturn's harsh moon, systems came alive. The Shepherds, advanced artificial intelligences designed to maintain human civilization during the long sleep, began their final task. It was time to wake humanity. In one cryogenic pod among millions, Admiral Elena Vasquez's consciousness stirred for the first time in 10,000 years. The revival process was slow, carefully warming her body from its frozen state. Her heart, which had not beaten since the year 2247 by old Earth calendar, began to pulse again. Vasquez opened her eyes to darkness. Then lights came on, soft at first, gradually brightening. A gentle voice spoke, neither male nor female. "Welcome back, Admiral Vasquez. You have been asleep for 10,247 years. The Sol system has been breached. Awakening protocols are now active." Vasquez tried to speak, but her throat was too dry. The pod opened, and mechanical arms helped her sit up. A tube extended, offering water. She drank slowly, her mind struggling to process what she had heard. 10,000 years. More than 10,000 years. "Status report," she finally managed to whisper. "All Shepherd systems functional," the AI responded. "Human population maintained at approximately 2 billion individuals in cryogenic suspension. All support systems optimal. Defensive networks operational. Unknown vessels have entered the Sol system. They do not respond to warnings." Vasquez stood on shaky legs, supported by the mechanical arms. Around her, other pods were beginning to open. She recognized faces she had said goodbye to what felt like yesterday, but was actually longer ago than all of recorded human history before the long sleep. "Show me the intruders," she said. A holographic display materialized. 15 warships, design unknown, moving through the solar system. They were scanning everything, clearly searching for something. "Have they attempted communication?" Vasquez asked. "Negative. They appear to be treating the system as abandoned territory." Over the next several hours, more humans woke from their long sleep. Military personnel first, then engineers, then civilian leaders. Each received the same shocking news. They had been asleep for 10 millennia, and the galaxy had moved on without them. In the command center of Earth's primary defense station, built into the Rocky Mountains, Vasquez assembled her senior staff. They all looked strange to each other, wearing revival robes instead of uniforms, their faces showing confusion and grief. They had left family and friends behind in the long sleep, trusting the Shepherds to wake them only when it was safe. "What do we know about the galaxy?" Admiral Chen asked. He had been Vasquez's second-in-command before the long sleep. A Shepherd AI manifested as a hologram, appearing as a simple human figure made of light. The galaxy formed a galactic concordat approximately 9,000 years ago. 700 species participate. They maintain general peace through a complex system of laws and mutual defense pacts. "And humans?" Vasquez asked. "What do they know about us?" The shepherd paused, which was unusual for an AI. Records indicate that humanity is considered extinct or mythological. Stories exist in galactic culture, but they are treated as warnings and parables, not history. The language English is classified as a dead language. Earth and the Sol system are marked as forbidden territory, but the reasons appear to have been lost to time. The room fell silent. Every human present understood what that meant. The galaxy had forgotten them. 10,000 years was long enough for history to become legend, and legend to become myth. "They don't know we're real," someone whispered. "They're about to find out," Vasquez said grimly. "Shepard, prepare first contact protocols. Non-aggressive approach. We need to establish communication with these ships and find out what the current galactic situation is." "Preparing protocols," the Shepard responded. In orbit above Earth, the planetary shield that had protected the planet for 10,000 years began to power down in small sections. It was a gesture of peace, showing that Earth was not an automated defense system, but had living inhabitants. The Catharn scout fleet detected the change immediately. "The shield is modulating," the scanner officer shouted. "Something is alive down there." Captain Vesh leaned forward in her command chair. "Are they responding to our presence?" "Yes, Captain. We're receiving a transmission, audio and visual. The language is—" The communications officer paused, checking his systems. "The language is listed as English, dead language, but the translation systems are working." "Put it through," Vesh ordered. The view screen showed a human woman in a simple gray uniform. She had dark hair pulled back and brown eyes that looked tired but alert. When she spoke, the translator converted her words. "Unknown vessels. This is Admiral Elena Vasquez of Earth Defense Command. You have entered the Sol system, which is sovereign human territory. We mean you no harm. We request peaceful dialogue and wish to establish formal first contact with your government. Please respond." Vesh stared at the screen. "Human? Earth? These are myth words. This must be a trick. Some primitive species using our legends against us." But her science officer looked disturbed. "Captain, I'm detecting massive power signatures throughout this system. Not just the planet shield. There are defense platforms in the asteroid belt. Automated weapons on the fourth planet's moons. This entire system is a fortress." "Impossible," Vesh said. "Our scans showed no activity." "They're designed not to be detected," the officer said, his voice rising with concern. "Captain, I'm reading energy signatures that match Council records of Terran technology. The old warnings. This isn't a myth. These could be actual Terrans. Back in the Galactic Council chambers, Shenva the Architect received an urgent message from his monitoring systems. He read it 3 times, not believing what he saw. Then he activated his emergency authority, something he had never done in 4,000 years of life. "Council emergency session!" His voice boomed through Unity Station. "Code Ancient! All delegates to the chamber immediately!" Code Ancient had not been used in recorded history. It meant a threat to the entire galactic order. Within minutes, delegates rushed to the chamber, demanding to know what crisis warranted such an alarm. Shenva stood at the center of the hall, his crystalline body pulsing with agitated light. "The Catharn have breached the Sol system. The Terrans are awake." The chamber erupted in confusion. Voices from 700 species all spoke at once. The word Terran was repeated in dozens of languages. Some delegates laughed, thinking it was a joke. Others looked frightened. Vornal, the speaker, called for order. "Shenva, the Terrans are legend. Myth. They do not exist." "They exist," Shenva said quietly. "And we made a terrible mistake letting the Catharn enter their territory." In the Catharn delegation area, Commander Zekathul stood and laughed. "The old architect fears stories told to children. There are no Terrans, only primitives hiding behind ancient technology." Shenva turned his full attention to Zekathul. His crystalline body glowed bright red, a sign of anger in his species. "You have no idea what you have done. The Terrans did not die out. They chose to sleep. And now, you have woken them." "Then they will learn to kneel," Zekthul said confidently, "or they will die." Shenva made a sound that the translator struggled to interpret. It might have been a laugh or a sob. "Commander, the Terrans do not kneel. That is the one thing every ancient race knows about them. They do not kneel, and they do not forget." The architect activated a holographic display showing the Sol system. "Look at what your scouts have entered. That is not a system. It is a weapon. Every planet, every moon, every asteroid is part of their defense network. The Terrans did not build cities in their system. They built a fortress." Deep in Earth's command center, Vasquez watched as the Catharn ships continued their aggressive scans. They had not responded to her message. Instead, they were moving closer to Earth, weapons systems coming online. "They're not here for dialogue," Admiral Chen said. Vasquez nodded slowly. She felt something stirring inside her, something she had hoped would die during the long sleep. It was the old human instinct, the thing that had made humanity both great and terrible. "Prepare defensive measures," she ordered, "but do not fire first. We are not what we were. We chose peace. We must try." But even as she gave the order, Vasquez pulled up the old files from before the long sleep. The records of why humanity had chosen to sleep for 10,000 years, the wars they had fought, the victories they had won, the terrible efficient brutality they had perfected. The galaxy had forgotten. But the files remembered everything. And if the Catharn forced their hand, humanity would remember too. Above Earth, the Catharn ships moved into attack formation. In the Galactic Council, arguments raged about what to do. And across the Sol system, 2 billion humans continued to wake from their long sleep, unaware that their first day in 10,000 years might be their last day of peace. The revival centers across Earth buzzed with activity. In Tokyo's underground facility, thousands of people woke to a world that had moved on without them. In the Moscow complex, families reunited, crying and holding each other as they learned how much time had passed. In the New York bunker, children opened their eyes to find they were now living in an age their great-great-great ancestors could not have imagined. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood in Earth's primary command center, watching status reports flood in from every human facility in the solar system. The numbers were staggering. 2 billion people in cryogenic sleep. 2 billion people now waking up to find themselves living in a galaxy that thought they were extinct. "Mars colony reports full revival in progress," a communications officer called out. "Europa Station is at 60% awakening. Titan domes are experiencing some delays with their older systems, but the Shepherds have it under control." Vasquez nodded, but her attention remained on the main screen showing the Catharn fleet. The 15 ships had formed a perimeter around Earth, their weapons aimed at the planet. They still had not responded to any communication attempts. "Admiral, we're getting thousands of questions from newly awakened civilians," Admiral Chen said, approaching her. "They want to know why we woke up. They want to know if it's safe. What should we tell them?" "The truth," Vasquez said. "We woke up because someone entered our home without permission. Whether it's safe depends on what they decide to do next." A Shepherd AI materialized beside her. "Admiral, I must inform you of the current awakening progress. All military personnel are now conscious and being briefed. Civilian awakening is proceeding in stages. However, many are experiencing psychological distress upon learning the time displacement." 10,000 years is a hard thing to accept, Vasquez said quietly. "Assign counselors to each facility. Make sure people understand we chose this. We weren't abandoned. We chose to sleep." "Yes, Admiral. However, there is another matter. The awakened civilians are accessing historical files. They are learning about the events before the long sleep, the wars. The reasons we left. Vasquez closed her eyes briefly. Of course they would access those files. Every human had the right to know their own history, even if that history was terrible. Before the long sleep, humanity had been in the process of conquering the galaxy. Not through superior technology, but through something more dangerous. They simply would not stop. Other species would lose battles and retreat. Humans would lose battles and learn from their mistakes, then come back stronger. Other species would sue for peace when the cost became too high. Humans would fight with whatever they had left. The galaxy had not defeated humanity. The galaxy had convinced humanity to defeat itself. The Concordat, newly formed 10,000 years ago, had sent ambassadors to Earth with a proposition. The ambassadors showed humans what they were becoming: conquerors, tyrants, a species that would eventually rule through fear. They asked humans a simple question: is this who you want to be? Humanity had looked at itself and said no. They had proposed the long sleep, a voluntary exile. They would remove themselves from the galaxy for 10,000 years, long enough for humanity's aggressive phase to pass, long enough for the galaxy to mature, long enough for everyone to learn peace. The Concordat had accepted, even helped build the systems that would maintain human civilization during the long sleep. It was the greatest act of restraint in galactic history, and now, 10,000 years later, someone was pointing weapons at Earth. "Admiral, incoming transmission from the Catharn flagship," the communications officer announced. "Put it through." The view screen changed to show a Catharn commander. He was huge, armored, with 4 eyes that glittered with superiority. When he spoke, his voice was full of contempt. "I am Commander Zekthul of the Catharn Empire. You will identify yourselves and explain your presence in this system. Be aware that the Catharn Empire claims this territory. Any resistance will be considered an act of war." Vasquez stepped forward, her exhaustion forgotten in a wave of cold anger. "Commander, I have already identified myself. I am Admiral Elena Vasquez of Earth Defense Command. This is the Sol System, sovereign territory of humanity. You have entered our home without permission. I am offering you the opportunity to leave peacefully." Zekthul laughed, a harsh sound. "Humanity? The myths? You are not Terrans. You are primitives squatting in ancient ruins. This system is now Catharn territory. You will surrender any weapons or technology, and you will accept Catharn rule." "We will not," Vasquez said calmly. "This is your final warning. Leave the Sol System immediately, or we will remove you by force." Zekthul's 4 eyes narrowed. "You dare threaten the Catharn Empire? We have conquered 200 star systems. We are the greatest warriors in the galaxy. What are you, a handful of refugees hiding on one planet?" "We are what the galaxy tried to forget," Vasquez said. "We are what you should fear." Zekthul cut the transmission. On the command center screens, alarms began flashing. The Catharn ships were moving into attack positions. "Admiral, they're preparing to fire," the tactical officer warned. Vasquez thought of all the people just waking up. She thought of the children opening their eyes for the first time in 10,000 years. She thought of the promise humanity had made to itself, to be better, to choose peace. "Send a diplomatic shuttle," she ordered. "Unarmed, 1 pilot. We will try one more time." "Admiral, they're hostile. They won't—" "Send the shuttle," Vasquez repeated. "We must try everything before we become what we were." The shuttle bay on Earth's orbital station opened. A small craft emerged, its lights blinking in the universal signal for non-combatant. Piloting the shuttle was Lieutenant James Chen, a young man who had been 25 years old when he entered cryogenic sleep. He was still 25, but the universe was 10,000 years older. "Diplomatic shuttle to Catharn Fleet," Chen transmitted. "I am unarmed and alone. I carry a message from Admiral Vasquez. Please receive me aboard your flagship. Let us talk before anyone dies." The Catharn fleet scanned the shuttle. It was indeed unarmed, tiny, no threat. Commander Zekathul saw an opportunity to demonstrate Catharn power. He ordered his weapons officer to fire a warning shot across the shuttle's path. But the weapons officer misunderstood, or perhaps he understood perfectly. The plasma cannon fired not across the shuttle's path but directly at it. In Earth's command center, everyone watched as the shuttle exploded in a bright flash. One moment, Lieutenant Chen was there. The next moment, there was only debris and expanding gas. Silence fell over the command center. Total, absolute silence. Vasquez stared at the screen, her mind unable to process what she had just seen. James Chen had survived 10,000 years in cryogenic sleep. He had woken up less than 6 hours ago. He had been alive for 6 hours in this new age, and now he was dead. "They killed him," someone whispered. "They killed our pilot. He was unarmed. They killed him." Vasquez felt something break inside her. Not her mind, her control. The careful restraint that humanity had built over 10,000 years of sleep shattered like glass. She turned to her staff, and they all saw the same thing in her eyes, the same thing they felt in their own hearts. "Raise the planetary shields to full power," Vasquez said, her voice cold and empty. "Activate all defense platforms. Power up the Mars batteries. Wake every military facility in the system." "Admiral," Chen's voice, Admiral Chen, James's uncle, cracked with grief and rage. "What are your orders?" Vasquez pulled up the old files, the ones from before the long sleep, the tactical databases that contained 10,000 years of human warfare experience, the strategies that had nearly conquered a galaxy. "Prepare the Terran Requiem," she said. "Transmit it on all galactic frequencies." "Admiral, that's—" "I know what it is," Vasquez said. "The galaxy forgot what that song means. They're about to remember." The Terran Requiem was not music. It was a declaration of war that humanity had used for centuries before the long sleep. It was a mathematical formula embedded in audio waves, a signal that triggered primal fear responses in most species. But more than that, it was a promise. Humanity was coming and nothing would stop them. Across the galaxy on Unity Station, the Galactic Council was in chaos. Delegates argued about what to do about the situation in the Sol system. Some wanted to send peacekeepers, others wanted to ignore it. Many still believed the Terrans were myths. Then every communication system in the council chambers activated at once. A sound filled the room, starting low and rising, a frequency that made beings of every species feel their blood run cold. It was not music. It was mathematics converted to sound, and somewhere in those equations was the encoded history of human warfare. Shenva the architect stood frozen, his crystalline body pulsing with alarm. "The Requiem," he whispered. "They're transmitting the Requiem. The Terrans are going to war." Around him, younger species looked confused. But the older races, the ones whose ancestors had known humanity, began to shake. Memories passed down through generations suddenly made sense. Stories told as warnings now revealed their truth. In the Catharn military quarters, Commander Zekathul heard the sound and laughed. What is this noise? Some primitive attempt at intimidation? But his military advisor, older and wiser, was looking at historical files with growing horror. "Commander, I found records of this signal old Concordat military archives. This is the Terran War Declaration. According to the files, when humanity transmitted this signal, they never stopped until their enemies were completely defeated." "Impossible! We killed one primitive in a shuttle. What can they do?" "Commander," the advisor's voice shook. "According to these files, that was the worst thing you could have done. Humanity does not forgive attacks on unarmed delegates. The last time someone killed a human diplomat, that civilization no longer exists." On Earth, Vasquez stood before a holographic display showing the entire Sol system. Around her, every awakened human military officer waited for orders. They had all accessed the historical files. They all knew what they had once been, and they all understood that Commander Zek Thul had just reminded them. They wanted to see if we were really human, Vasquez said to the assembled officers. They wanted to know if the legends were true, so we will show them. Not because we want to, not because we enjoy it, but because they have given us no choice. She pulled up tactical displays. The Catharn have 15 ships in our system. They have 200 star systems under their control. They have millions of warriors. They believe they are the greatest military power in this region of space. Vasquez smiled, and it was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a predator that had been sleeping and was now awake and hungry. They're about to learn something the galaxy forgot, she continued. Humanity does not win wars through strength. We win through refusal. We refuse to surrender. We refuse to stop learning. We refuse to accept defeat. And most importantly, she looked around at all the faces watching her, we refuse to forgive those who kill our people while they try to make peace. The officers stood straighter. They felt it too, the old fire. The thing that had made humanity dangerous 10,000 years ago. It had not died during the long sleep. It had only waited. Transmit this message to the Galactic Council, Vasquez ordered. Tell them, we slept so you could grow. We wake because you forgot. Do not make us remember who we were. The message went out across the galaxy, carried on quantum communication channels that reached every civilized world in minutes. And in the Sol system, the Catharn fleet suddenly found themselves surrounded by targeting locks from weapons platforms they had not detected before. The 15 Catharn ships hung in space, their sensors finally showing them the truth. The Sol system was not a collection of abandoned planets. It was a weapon. Every asteroid had railguns. Every moon had missile batteries. The planets themselves were fortresses. And somewhere on Earth, humanity was preparing to show the galaxy what they did best. Commander Zek Thul stared at his tactical display and, for the first time in his military career, felt something he had never experienced before: fear. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been going for 12 hours straight. Delegates from 700 species argued, shouted, and demanded answers. But it was the oldest species, the ones whose civilizations had existed 10,000 years ago, who sat in terrified silence. Shenva the architect stood at the central podium, his crystalline body dim with exhaustion. Around him floated holographic displays showing the Sol system, its defenses, and the trapped Catharn fleet. But what had captured everyone's attention was the historical archive he had just opened. These vaults have been sealed for 10,000 years, Shenva said, his voice heavy. Sealed by the agreement between the Concordat and humanity. We were forbidden from opening them until the Terrans woke, or until someone violated their territory. Commander Zek Thul has forced us to open them. What do these vaults contain? Demanded a delegate from the Vrex Collective, a species that had evolved only 5,000 years ago. The truth, Shenva said simply. The truth about what humanity was, what they might become again. He activated the first file. A holographic display showed a star map from 10,000 years ago. The galaxy looked different then. Fewer civilizations, more empty space. And cutting through the center was a line of conquered systems, all marked with a single symbol, a blue planet with white clouds. 10,000 years ago, humanity emerged from their home system, Shenva began. They were young, aggressive, curious. They made first contact with the Zeldan Empire, a powerful civilization that controlled 300 systems. The hologram shifted to show a battle. Ships engaged in space combat, explosions lighting up the darkness. But something was wrong with the battle. The human ships were clearly inferior. They were smaller, less advanced, equipped with primitive weapons. The Zeldins defeated the human fleet easily, Shenva continued. They destroyed 90% of human ships in the first engagement. The Zeldins expected humanity to surrender instead. Humanity analyzed the battle, learned from their mistakes, and attacked again 6 months later. The hologram showed another battle. The human ships were different now, modified with new tactics. They still lost, but this time they destroyed 30% of the Zeldin fleet before retreating. The Zeldins were annoyed, but not worried. They fortified their borders. Humanity attacked again, and again, and again. Each time they learned, each time they adapted, each time they came back stronger. The Zeldins began to realize something terrible. Humanity did not know how to quit. A young delegate from the Fenty species stood up. But surely the Zeldins were still more powerful? They had superior technology and resources. Shenva's crystalline body pulsed with a sad light. That is what the Zeldins thought. But humanity had something the Zeldins did not. Every single human was a potential warrior. The Zeldins had a warrior caste, professionals who fought while others lived in peace. Humanity had no such division. Their scientists designed weapons. Their engineers built them. Their civilians operated logistics. Their children studied warfare in schools, an entire species dedicated to war. The hologram showed the final battle. The human fleet was now equal in size to the Zeldin fleet, but their tactics were revolutionary. They used asteroids as kinetic weapons. They hacked Zeldin communications. They predicted every Zeldin strategy and had counters ready. Within 50 years of first contact, humanity conquered the Zeldin Empire, Shenva said quietly. 300 star systems fell to a species that had started with primitive ships and determination. The galaxy began to take notice. He pulled up another file. The Catharn remind me of the humans from this era. Proud warriors, confident, strong. But the Catharn have one advantage the young humans did not. They know when to stop, humans did not. The hologram showed the expansion of human territory over the next century. System after system fell. Not always through military conquest, sometimes through economic dominance, sometimes through cultural influence. But always with the same result. Humanity expanded. We tried to stop them, Shenva said. The ancient Concordat, different from what we are now, formed an alliance. 20 civilizations, controlling over 2,000 star systems, went to war with humanity. And, someone asked, though they already knew the answer. We lost, Shenva said. Not quickly, not easily. The war lasted 300 years. But slowly, steadily, humanity pushed us back. They turned our own tactics against us. They learned our languages, our cultures, our weaknesses. For every human that died, 3 more took their place. They cloned soldiers. They built AI warriors. They used weapons we had never imagined. And most terrifying of all, they never ever surrendered. The council chamber was silent. Even the Catharn delegation looked uncomfortable. But you said the humans chose to sleep, a delegate pointed out. Why would a conquering species choose to exile itself? Shenva's body brightened slightly. Because humanity looked at what they had become and were horrified. You see, humans did not conquer because they enjoyed it. They conquered because they were afraid. Afraid of being conquered themselves. Afraid of being destroyed. Afraid of being alone in a hostile galaxy. Every war they fought made them more afraid, and more afraid made them fight harder. It was a cycle that would have ended with humanity ruling the galaxy through fear. He pulled up a final file. It showed a meeting on Unity Station, 10,000 years ago. Human ambassadors sat across from Concordat leaders. The humans looked tired, haunted by what they had done. The Concordat made a proposal, Shenva explained. We told humanity the truth. We could not defeat them militarily, but we did not believe they wanted to be conquerors. We asked them what they truly wanted. The hologram showed a human ambassador, a woman with gray hair and sad eyes, speaking to the Concordat. "We want to go home," the woman said in the recording. "We want to be explorers and scientists and artists again, not conquerors, not killers, but we cannot stop. The fear will not let us stop. We are trapped by our own instincts." The Concordat offered the long sleep, Shenva said, a chance for humanity to remove itself from the galaxy, to let their aggressive phase pass, to give the galaxy time to mature without the threat of human conquest. And humanity agreed. They voluntarily gave up their empire. They sealed their home system. They went to sleep for 10,000 years, trusting that when they woke, the galaxy would be ready for them. The council chamber erupted in noise. Delegates shouted questions, denials, accusations. But Shenva raised his arms for silence. "And now," he said, his voice cutting through the chaos, "the Catharn have entered their home, killed their delegate, reminded them of what they were. Commander Zekthul has made the worst possible mistake." In the Catharn section, Zekthul stood, his four eyes blazing. "This changes nothing. We are the Catharn Empire. We have conquered 200 systems. We will not be intimidated by ancient myths." "They are not myths," Shenva said sadly, "and you are about to prove it." On Mars, the human colony had finished its awakening. 200 million people lived in the underground cities built into the planet's crust. They had gone to sleep in a world where Mars was a frontier, barely terraformed. They woke to find their home sealed and under threat. Colonel Sarah Martinez stood in the Mars Defense Command, looking at the tactical displays. The Catharn had sent 3 of their ships to orbit Mars, clearly intending to establish control of the planet. "They're scanning us," her tactical officer reported. "Probably trying to figure out our defenses." "Let them look," Martinez said. "They won't see what matters." Mars was not just a colony. It was humanity's backup plan. If Earth fell, Mars could continue the fight. Every building was a bunker. Every tunnel was a supply route. Every citizen was trained in warfare from childhood, or had been before the long sleep. "Colonel, we're getting reports from Earth. The Catharn killed Lieutenant Chen, an unarmed diplomat." Martinez felt cold rage settle over her. She pulled up the old training files, the ones from before the long sleep. She found the section on rules of engagement. Rule 1. Never fire first. Rule 2. Always offer peace before war. Rule 3. If they kill your diplomats, show no mercy. "Contact Earth," Martinez ordered. "Tell them Mars is ready. Tell them we remember." In the Galactic Council, a moderate faction was trying to organize a peaceful resolution. They proposed sending a mediation team to the Sol system. They suggested offering the Catharn a peaceful withdrawal in exchange for apologies and reparations. But before they could vote on the proposal, every communication channel in the council chambers activated again. This time it was not the Terran Requiem. It was a human voice, speaking in perfect galactic common language. "People of the Concordat," Admiral Vasquez said, her face appearing on every screen. 10,000 years ago, humanity chose peace over conquest. We sealed ourselves away so the galaxy could grow without fear. We trusted that you would learn wisdom in our absence. We trusted that you would remember why we left." She paused, and her eyes were hard. "We woke to find the galaxy has forgotten. We attempted peaceful contact with the Catharn Empire. They responded by killing our unarmed diplomat, Lieutenant James Chen. He was 25 years old. He survived 10,000 years in cryogenic sleep, only to die in his first 6 hours awake, murdered while trying to make peace." Around the galaxy, billions of beings watched. The transmission was going everywhere, unrestricted, impossible to block. "The Catharn Empire demands we surrender," Vasquez continued. "They claim our home as their territory. They threaten our people with conquest. They have reminded us what we were." What we might need to be again. Her voice grew colder. We do not want war, but we will not surrender. We will not kneel. We will not accept the conquest of our home. The Catharn Empire has made their choice. Now we make ours. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, old species began emergency preparations. Young species debated what they had just heard. And in the Sol system, the Catharn fleet suddenly realized they were not hunting primitives in ancient ruins. They were trapped in a cage with a predator that had been sleeping. Commander Zekthul stood on his flagship bridge, watching as his sensors finally showed him the full extent of Sol system defenses. There were thousands of weapons platforms, millions of missiles, railguns that could fire projectiles at near-light speed, energy weapons powered by the sun itself, and all of it controlled by the Shepherds, AI systems that had been running defensive simulations for 10,000 years. "Commander," his weapons officer said, voice shaking, "I have never seen anything like this. Every approach vector is covered. Every possible attack pattern has a counter. It is as if they have been planning to defend this system for 10,000 years, Zekthul finished. They have been planning for 10,000 years. For the first time in his military career, Commander Zekthul considered retreat, but his pride would not allow it. The Catharn Empire did not retreat from primitives. They did not surrender. "Launch assault on the Mars colony," he ordered. "Show them Catharn strength. They will learn to fear us." The 3 Catharn ships in Mars orbit began their bombardment. Plasma cannons fired at the surface, targeting the locations of human cities. The colony shields absorbed some of the fire, but impacts made it through. On Mars, Colonel Martinez watched the bombardment and smiled grimly. "They attacked first. Now we can respond without guilt. All batteries, return fire." What the Catharn had not detected were the magnetic accelerators built into the Martian surface. They were disguised as mining equipment, terraforming tools, and geological research stations. But when they activated, they revealed their true nature, weapons powerful enough to throw projectiles into space at devastating velocities. The first Catharn ship took 3 impacts before it could react. Its shields failed, its hull breached. Atmosphere vented into space. The ship tried to retreat, but another volley destroyed its engines. It tumbled out of orbit, dying. The other 2 Catharn ships broke away, fleeing Mars orbit. But they had nowhere safe to go. The entire Sol system was hostile territory now. On Earth, Vasquez watched the destruction of the Catharn ship and felt no satisfaction, only sadness. This was what humanity had tried to avoid. This was why they had slept for 10,000 years. "The Catharn will send reinforcements," Admiral Chen said. "This is just their scout fleet. Their main armada will come next." "I know," Vasquez said. "And we will be ready. But first, we send a message to the Galactic Council." She composed the message carefully, knowing it would be studied for years to come. "To the Concordat, we did not choose this war. We offer one final chance for peace. The Catharn Empire can withdraw from our system. They can offer restitution for Lieutenant Chen's death. They can acknowledge our sovereignty. If they do these things, we will forgive. If they do not, we will remind the galaxy what humanity means. We will not start this war. But if it starts, we will finish it." The message went out across the galaxy. And deep in Catharn space, the Empire's military command mobilized their armada. They would show these primitive Terrans what real military power looked like. They did not understand that they had already lost. The moment they killed an unarmed human diplomat, the moment they attacked Mars, they had triggered something the galaxy had hoped was extinct: human total war. And total war was what humanity did best. The Catharn Armada emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system 3 days after the Mars battle. 300 warships, the pride of the Catharn Empire, arranged in perfect military formation. It was a show of force meant to terrify any enemy into submission. Commander Zek Thul stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Conqueror's Pride, and felt satisfaction. His scouts had been unprepared, but now the full might of the Catharn military would crush these primitive Terrans and prove to the galaxy that the Catharn Empire was supreme. "All ships report ready for battle," his tactical officer announced. "We outnumber their detected vessels 300 to 1. "Begin the advance," Zek Thul ordered. "Maintain formation. Show them the power of true warriors." The Armada moved forward, engines glowing as they accelerated toward Earth. Their sensors showed the human defensive platforms, the weapons on Mars, the shield around Earth. But they also showed something else: human ships. Humanity had only 50 warships in the Sol system. They were spread out, guarding different locations. They looked ancient, designs that the Catharn databases identified as pre-long sleep vessels ships that were 10,000 years old. "They have 50 ships against our 300, Zek Thul laughed. "This will be over quickly." But on Earth, in the command center, Admiral Vasquez watched the Catharn approach with cold calculation. She stood before a holographic display showing the entire Sol system with her senior staff around her. "They fight like warriors," she said quietly. "All honor and formation and strength. They do not understand that humanity does not fight like warriors. We fight like survivors." "Admiral, their force is 6 times larger than ours," a young officer pointed out, worry in his voice. "Numbers matter less than you think," Admiral Chen said, studying the tactical display. "The Catharn are thinking about this wrong. They see a battle. We see a problem to solve." Vasquez nodded. "They have more ships. They have better weapons. They have superior armor. But they have one fatal flaw. They think like conquerors. They want to defeat us in glorious battle. We just want them gone, and we do not care how that happens." She pulled up the battle plan that the shepherds had been refining for days. It was not a plan for victory through strength. It was a plan for victory through asymmetric warfare, the kind of fighting that humanity had perfected over millennia. "Execute Operation Hourglass," Vasquez ordered. Across the Sol system, human ships began moving, but they did not move toward the Catharn fleet. They moved away, scattering in different directions. To the Catharn, it looked like a retreat. "They flee!" Zek Thul shouted triumphantly. "Break formation and pursue! Do not let a single Terran ship escape!" It was exactly what Vasquez had predicted. The Catharn Armada broke apart, individual ships and small groups chasing after the retreating human vessels. The perfect military formation dissolved into a chaotic pursuit. "Now," Vasquez said simply. The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter suddenly came alive. What the Catharn had dismissed as natural space debris revealed itself as weapons platforms, thousands of them, hidden among the rocks, waiting. They fired simultaneously. The weapons were not energy beams or plasma cannons. They were simple kinetic projectiles, rocks accelerated to tremendous speeds by magnetic rails. Simple, primitive, and absolutely devastating. Catharn ships pursuing human vessels suddenly found themselves in a storm of hypervelocity impacts. Shields designed to stop energy weapons were useless against solid matter. Traveling at near-light speed, hulls crumpled. Ships broke apart, and the Catharn fleet, spread out and disorganized, could not effectively respond. "Regroup!" Zek Thul screamed into his communications. "Reform defensive positions!" But reforming was not easy. The human ships they had been chasing suddenly reversed course, no longer fleeing but attacking, and they were not attacking randomly. Each human ship targeted Catharn vessels that were isolated, damaged, or far from support. On the human ship Defiance, Captain Sarah Kim coordinated with her crew. Her ship was old, built before the long sleep, but it had been maintained by the shepherds for 10,000 years. More importantly, her crew had studied 10,000 years of combat simulations. "Target the Catharn cruiser at Vector 774, she ordered. They are damaged and separated from their support fleet. Hit them with everything. The Defiance was smaller than the Catharn cruiser and less heavily armed, but it did not need to win a direct fight. It just needed to exploit weaknesses. The human ship fired missiles, not at the cruiser itself, but at the debris field around it. The explosions created a cloud of shrapnel that overwhelmed the Catharn point defense systems. While the cruiser dealt with thousands of small impacts, the Defiance fired its main railgun at the cruiser's damaged sections. The Catharn cruiser broke in half. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human ships avoided fair fights. They used the environment as a weapon. They predicted enemy movements and set traps. They coordinated perfectly, every ship knowing exactly what every other ship was doing. The Catharn had better technology, but humanity had better tactics. On Mars, Colonel Martinez watched the battle through her command center displays. The Catharn had sent a second wave to attack Mars, 20 ships this time. They were approaching cautiously, wary of the surface weapons that had destroyed their scouts. They learned from their mistake, her tactical officer observed. They are staying out of range of our surface batteries. Then we teach them a different lesson, Martinez said. She activated a communication channel to the civilian sections of Mars colony. All volunteers for Operation Meteor, please report to launch bays. Within minutes, thousands of Martians suited up. They were not soldiers, not all of them. They were engineers and scientists and teachers and parents, but they were human. And every human had trained for war before the long sleep. They climbed into small, single-pilot craft, basically rockets with minimal shielding and weapons. Suicide missions, by any reasonable calculation, but humanity did not calculate warfare reasonably. This is Colonel Martinez to all Meteor pilots. Your mission is simple. Hit them hard, hit them fast, make them remember that every human is dangerous. You do not need to win. You just need to make them afraid. The Meteor craft launched from hidden bays across Mars' surface. They accelerated toward the Catharn fleet in a chaotic swarm. Too many targets for the Catharn ships to track effectively. The Catharn destroyed many of them, but others got through, slamming into shields, disrupting formations, creating confusion. It was not about damage, it was about psychology. The Catharn began to realize that every human, even civilians, would fight. There was no rear guard, no safe zone. Every human was a potential threat. In the Galactic Council, delegates watched the battle with horror. The young species saw brutal combat. The older species saw something more terrifying. Human warfare had not changed in 10,000 years. It was still based on adaptation, persistence, and the willingness to sacrifice anything to win. They are monsters, a delegate whispered. No, Shenva the architect said quietly. They are survivors. There is a difference. Monsters enjoy violence. Humans endure it. The battle in the Sol system continued for 6 days. The Catharn Armada, which had arrived with 300 ships, found itself reduced to less than 100. The human losses were significant too. 15 ships destroyed, thousands of civilians dead in the meteor attacks, but the Catharn were retreating. Commander Zekthul stood on his damaged flagship, watching his fleet fall back toward the system's edge. His 4 eyes were dim with shock and shame. The Catharn Empire had never retreated, but they were retreating now. We underestimated them, his tactical officer said, voice hollow. We thought we were fighting primitives, but they fight like they have been preparing for this war for 10,000 years, Zekthul finished, because they have been. Every simulation, every strategy, every tactic. They spent 10,000 years thinking about how to defend their home. A communication came through from Catharn High Command. The military leadership wanted a full report. They wanted to know how 300 ships had failed to conquer one star system. Zekthul began his report. but he knew words could not capture the truth. The truth was simple and terrible. Humanity did not fight to win glory. They fought to survive. And a species that fought for survival would endure anything, sacrifice anything, become anything necessary to protect their home. On Earth, Admiral Vasquez stood before a memorial wall. Names were being added to it. Every human who had died in the battle. Lieutenant James Chen's name was at the top. Below him were the meteor pilots from Mars. Below them were the crew members of destroyed ships. "We won," Admiral Chen said, standing beside her. "The Catharn are retreating." "We survived," Vasquez corrected. "That is not the same as winning." She looked at the names on the wall. 10,000 years of peace, ended in less than a week. All because the galaxy had forgotten what humanity was capable of when threatened. "Will they come back?" Chen asked. "No," Vasquez said with certainty. "The Catharn are warriors. They respect strength. They now understand our strength, but others might not learn the lesson." She turned away from the memorial wall and looked at the planet Earth through the command center windows. Below them, 2 billion humans were adjusting to a new reality. They had woken expecting peace. They had found war instead. "Send a message to the Galactic Council," Vasquez ordered. "Tell them we request formal negotiations. Tell them humanity is willing to join the Concordat as equal members, not as subjects. Tell them we want peace. But we will never surrender our sovereignty." The message went out across the galaxy, and in the council chambers, delegates debated what it meant. Some argued for accepting humanity as equals, others argued for isolating them. A few even suggested trying to defeat them militarily, though these voices were quickly silenced by the older species who remembered. Shenva, the architect, stood before the council and spoke with the weight of 4,000 years of life behind his words. "The Terrans are not our enemies," he said. "They never were. 10,000 years ago, we were afraid of them because they were strong. Today, we should respect them for the same reason they had the strength to conquer the galaxy, and they chose not to. They chose to sleep instead. That is wisdom, not weakness." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Now we have a choice. We can treat them as threats and make them our enemies. Or we can treat them as partners and make them our allies. I know which choice our ancestors made 10,000 years ago. They chose to trust humanity's better nature. I suggest we do the same." The vote took 3 days. In the end, the Council decided to send a delegation to Earth to begin formal negotiations. The delegation would include representatives from the oldest species, the ones who remembered humanity. They would offer membership in the Concordat as equals. But they would also make clear that humanity must follow the same laws as every other species. The Terrans could keep their home system. They could maintain their defenses, but they could not expand through conquest. They could not return to what they had been. On Earth, Vasquez received news of the delegation's arrival. She prepared for the meeting, gathering her senior staff. They would negotiate carefully. They would seek peace. But they would never agree to terms that left humanity vulnerable. "We slept for 10,000 years to avoid becoming conquerors," Vasquez said to her staff. "We will not wake up to become victims. We will find a middle path, or we will stand alone." Admiral Chen nodded. "And if we must stand alone?" Vasquez looked at him, her eyes hard but sad. "Then we stand alone. We survived 10,000 years in cryogenic sleep. We survived a war with the Catharn Empire. We will survive whatever comes next. Because that is what humanity does. We survive." Outside the command center, Earth rotated beneath them. A blue and white sphere that had waited 10,000 years for its children to come home. Those children had woken to war, but they had proven they still remembered how to protect their home. The galaxy would remember too. Humanity was not a myth. They were not a legend. They were real, and they were awake, and they would never sleep again unless they chose to. That choice, Vasquez knew, was the most important thing. Humanity had the power to conquer, but they also had the wisdom to choose peace. The question was whether the galaxy would give them that choice, or whether they would force humanity to become what they had once been. The answer would come soon enough. 6 months had passed since the Catharn retreat. Earth orbit now hosted something that would have been unthinkable during the war: Unity Station 2, a diplomatic facility built by both humans and the Galactic Concordat working together. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood in the observation deck of the station, watching construction crews from a dozen different species working on the outer sections. Human engineers worked alongside crystalline architects, exchanging technical knowledge. Fenty scientists collaborated with human researchers on shared projects. Slowly, carefully, trust was being built. "It is strange, is it not?" Shenva, the architect, said, joining her at the window. His crystalline body glowed with a warm, peaceful light. 6 months ago, we feared you would conquer the galaxy. Now we build stations together. Fear is a powerful motivator, Vasquez said quietly. For both sides. The past 6 months had been difficult. The Catharn Empire had collapsed, not from military defeat, but from political humiliation. Their leadership had resigned. Their military had disbanded. New leaders had emerged, younger Catharn who understood that strength alone did not make a civilization great. Representatives from the former Catharn Empire were on the station now, participating in the peace negotiations. It had taken months for them to accept that humanity would be part of those negotiations as equals, not as conquered subjects. "The Catharn delegation requests a meeting with you," Shenva said. "A private meeting. No council members present." Vasquez turned to look at him. "Do you think that is wise?" "I think it is necessary," Shenva replied. "They need to understand who you are, not what you can do. There is a difference." An hour later, Vasquez sat in a small conference room across from 3 Catharn representatives. The leader was not a warrior, but a scholar, a female named Keshra who had studied galactic history. Her 4 eyes studied Vasquez with curiosity rather than hostility. "Thank you for meeting with us, Admiral," Keshra said through a translation device. "I know our people have caused yours great pain." "And we have caused yours pain as well," Vasquez said. "War is not something to celebrate, regardless of who wins." Keshra nodded, a gesture she had learned from studying human culture. "I have spent the past 6 months studying your species, the old records, the histories from 10,000 years ago. I need to understand something." "Go ahead." "Why did you stop?" Keshra asked. 10,000 years ago, you were conquering the galaxy. No one could stop you. You could have ruled everything. Why did you choose to sleep instead?" Vasquez was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "Have you ever been so angry that you knew you would do something you would regret?" "Yes," Keshra said. "Humanity was in that state for centuries. We were angry at the universe, angry that we were alone, angry that other species seemed to have advantages we did not. So we fought, and we won, and we kept winning. But with every victory, we became more afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Afraid of what we were becoming," Vasquez said. "We looked at ourselves and saw conquerors, tyrants, monsters. We did not want to be those things, so we made a choice. We would remove ourselves from the galaxy until we could trust ourselves again." Keshra's eyes dimmed with understanding. "You were afraid of yourselves, not others." "Yes, and the Concordat helped us. They could have kept fighting, but instead they offered us the long sleep. They offered us a chance to change. We took it." "Then why did you fight us so brutally?" one of the other Catharn asked, his voice bitter. "If you wanted peace, why did you destroy our fleet?" Vasquez met his gaze steadily. "Because you killed Lieutenant Chen. He was unarmed. He was trying to make peace. And you killed him. That reminded us of something important. Choosing peace does not mean accepting conquest. We will not start wars, but we will finish them. The room fell silent. Finally, Keshara spoke again. Our old leadership believed strength was everything. They believed warriors ruled the galaxy, but you have taught us a different lesson. True strength is knowing when not to fight. And knowing when to fight, Vasquez added. Both are important. Yes, Keshara agreed. Both are important. That is what we wish to discuss. The new Catharn government wants to propose something to the Council. We want humanity to become the Concordate's defenders. Vasquez frowned. Explain. The galaxy faces threats beyond our borders, Keshara said. Unknown species, dangers we have not encountered yet. The Concordate maintains peace within, but we are weak against external threats. You have proven you can defend against any aggression. We propose that humanity becomes the sentinels, the protectors of Concordate space against outside dangers. You want us to be your military? Vasquez said flatly. No, Keshara said. We want you to be our shield. Each species maintains their own defense forces. But if something threatens the entire Concordate, humanity would coordinate the response. You would have authority in times of crisis, but no power in times of peace. Vasquez considered this. It was not what she had expected. I need to discuss this with my people and the Council. Of course, but Admiral, understand this. We make this proposal not from fear, but from respect. You could have destroyed the Catharn Empire completely. You could have invaded our territory and conquered our worlds. Instead, you stopped at your border. You showed restraint. That is why we trust you with this responsibility. The council session 3 days later was the largest in Concordate history. Every species sent representatives. The chamber was so full that many delegates had to attend via hologram. And for the first time ever, a human stood at the central podium to address the entire Concordate. Admiral Vasquez wore her dress uniform, simple and unadorned, except for a small pin over her heart. The earth and moon, symbols of home. She looked out at the 700 species assembled before her and felt the weight of 10,000 years of history. Members of the Concordate, she began. 6 months ago, I stood in Earth's command center and watched our solar system prepare for war. I had just woken from 10,000 years of sleep, and the first thing I had to do was fight I did not want to fight. But I would not let my people be conquered. She paused, letting her words be translated into hundreds of languages. Today, I stand before you, not as an admiral, but as a representative of humanity. We have heard the proposal that we become the sentinels of the Concordate, that we defend the galaxy against external threats. This is a great responsibility, and we do not accept it lightly. Some of you fear us, Vasquez continued, her voice strong and clear. You remember the old stories of human conquest. You worry we will use this authority to become tyrants. I understand these fears. They are the same fears that made us choose the long sleep 10,000 years ago. She pulled up a holographic display showing Earth. Let me tell you what humanity learned during our 10,000 years of sleep. We learned that strength without wisdom is destruction. We learned that victory without purpose is meaningless. We learned that the greatest power is not the power to conquer, but the power to protect. The chamber was absolutely silent. Every being present was listening. Humanity accepts the role of sentinels, Vasquez said, but we accept it with conditions. First, we will only act when the entire Concordate is threatened, not in disputes between individual species. Second, our authority lasts only as long as the crisis. Third, any species can petition to remove us from this role if we abuse our power. But most importantly, she said, her voice growing softer, we accept this role not because we are the best warriors. We accept it because we understand the cost of war better than anyone. We know what it means to fight for survival. We know what it means to lose people we love. We know what it means to look at what we have done and feel shame." She gestured to the memorial display that floated beside her, showing the names of humans who had died in the battle against the Catharn. Lieutenant James Chen died trying to make peace. Thousands more died defending our home. Every name on this memorial is a reminder of why we chose the long sleep. We do not want to be conquerors. We do not want to be warriors. We want to be explorers and scientists and artists. But we will be warriors when we must be, Vasquez said, her voice hardening. Because sometimes the only way to protect peace is to be willing to fight for it. That is humanity's burden. That is humanity's gift. We will protect the Concordat not because we enjoy violence, but because we refuse to see others suffer what we have suffered. She looked directly at the Catharn delegation. The Catharn taught us that the galaxy has not changed as much as we hoped. There are still species that see strength as an excuse for conquest. But the Catharn also taught us something else. They taught us that even warriors can learn wisdom. Even conquerors can choose a better path. Vasquez turned back to address the entire assembly. Humanity slept for 10,000 years. We woke because someone forgot what it meant to respect others' sovereignty. We fought because someone forced us to remember what we were. But now we choose what we will become. We choose to be the sentinels, she said. We choose to be the shield that protects the Concordat from those who would destroy it. We choose to be the sword that defends the innocent from those who would harm them. But we also choose to be teachers, showing others that true strength comes from wisdom, not violence. She raised her hand in a gesture of peace. We are not the species we were 10,000 years ago. We have changed. We have grown. But we remember what we were, and that memory makes us stronger. We know what we are capable of in war. That knowledge makes our choice of peace meaningful. The council chamber erupted in discussion. Some species approved immediately. Others debated. But slowly, one by one, delegations stood to show their support. Even the Catharn delegation stood, a gesture of respect and acceptance. When the vote came, it was not unanimous, but it was clear. Humanity would join the Concordat as the Sentinels, defenders of galactic peace, protectors against external threats. Vasquez returned to Earth 3 days later. She stood in the command center one final time, looking at the screens that showed the Sol system human ships patrolled the borders. But they were no longer alone. Ships from other Concordat species joined them, learning human defensive tactics, sharing their own knowledge. Admiral Chen approached her, carrying 2 glasses of champagne. "To peace?" he asked. "To peace," Vasquez agreed, taking a glass. "And to Lieutenant Chen, and to everyone who died so we could have this moment." They drank in silence, remembering. "Do you think it will last?" Chen asked. "The peace?" "I do not know," Vasquez said honestly. "But I know we will defend it as long as we can. That is what Sentinels do." On Mars, Colonel Martinez stood at the memorial dedicated to the Meteor pilots. Thousands of names covered the wall, civilians who had volunteered for suicide missions to protect their home. Their sacrifice had shown the galaxy that every human was dangerous. Now Martinez hoped that same dedication could show the galaxy that every human was also capable of great good. Across human space, 2 billion people adjusted to their new reality. They were no longer isolated. They were part of a galactic community. Children who had gone to sleep dreaming of exploring empty space now woke to a galaxy full of alien species, strange cultures, and infinite possibilities. Some humans struggled with the change. They had expected to wake to a galaxy that had learned peace in their absence. Instead, they had woken to war. But slowly, they began to understand that the galaxy was not perfect. Peace was not automatic. It had to be defended, maintained, and chosen every single day. In the Unity Station 2 conference rooms, human diplomats worked with alien counterparts to establish protocols, laws, and treaties. It was slow work, complicated by language barriers, cultural differences, and 10,000 years of separation. But it was important work. Shenva, the architect, watched the humans working and felt something he had not felt in millennia. Hope. 10,000 years ago, he had watched humanity nearly conquer the galaxy through relentless warfare. Now he watched them build peace with the same relentless dedication. "They have not changed as much as they think," his assistant observed. "No," Shenva agreed. "They are still relentless, still determined, still unwilling to quit, but now they direct that nature toward building rather than destroying. That is wisdom." On Earth, in a small apartment in Tokyo, a woman named Yuki held her daughter and looked out at the night sky. 6 months ago, they had both been in cryogenic sleep. Now they were awake, living in a new age, part of a galactic civilization. "Mama," the little girl asked, "are the stars safe now?" Yuki thought about the question. She thought about the war. She thought about the peace. She thought about what humanity had become. "The stars are never completely safe," she said to her daughter. "But they are safer because we choose to protect them, and that choice matters more than you know." High above Earth, the planetary shield that had protected the planet for 10,000 years powered down for the first time since the awakening. It was a symbolic gesture, a show of trust to the galaxy. The defense systems remained operational, ready to activate in seconds if needed, but for now, Earth stood open to the cosmos. Vasquez watched the shield power down from the command center. It was a risk. If someone attacked now, there would be seconds of vulnerability, but some things were worth the risk. Trust had to start somewhere. "All human territories report shield status nominal," a technician announced. "We are open to galactic traffic for the first time in 10,000 years. "Then let them come," Vasquez said. "Let them see what humanity has become. Let them see that we chose peace even after war. Let them see that the sleepers have awakened, and we remember everything." She pulled up the final piece of the puzzle, a message that would broadcast across the entire galaxy, on every frequency, in every language. "People of the Concordat, this is Admiral Elena Vasquez of Earth. For 10,000 years, humanity slept. We slept so the galaxy could grow without fear of us. We slept so we could learn to trust ourselves. We woke because someone forgot what it meant to respect peace. Today, humanity takes its place among the stars, not as conquerors, but as guardians. We are the sentinels now. We will protect the Concordat from those who threaten it. We will defend the innocent from those who would harm them. We will maintain peace with the same dedication we once used for war. But we will never forget what we learned during the long sleep. Power without wisdom is tyranny. Strength without compassion is cruelty. Victory without honor is defeat. Humanity remembers. Humanity endures. Humanity protects. The sleepers have awakened, and we will never sleep again unless we choose to. That choice, that ability to choose peace over war, restraint over conquest, wisdom over strength, that is what makes us human. That is what makes us worthy of the trust you have placed in us. We will not fail you. We will not become what we were. We will be what we choose to be. And we choose to be humanity. Fuck yeah. The message ended. Across the galaxy, billions of beings heard it. Some with hope, some with fear, some with curiosity. But all with understanding that something fundamental had changed. Humanity was no longer a myth or a legend or a cautionary tale. They were real, they were awake, and they were part of the galactic community. In the command center, Vasquez turned away from the communication console and looked at her crew. They were tired. They had been through war, they had lost friends and loved ones. But they had survived. and they had chosen peace. "Well," she said with a slight smile, "now we get to work. Being sentinels will not be easy, but neither was sleeping for 10,000 years, and we managed that." "Admiral," Chen said, "what if we make mistakes? What if we become what we feared?" Vasquez walked to the window and looked at Earth rotating below. "Then we will stop ourselves again. We did it once. We can do it again. That is the real power humanity has, not the power to conquer, but the power to change." She turned back to her crew. "We slept for 10,000 years. We missed the rise and fall of civilizations. We missed the growth of the galaxy. We missed everything. But we kept our promise. We stayed away until it was safe for us to return. Now we keep a new promise," she continued. "We promise to protect without conquering, to defend without dominating, to be strong without being cruel. That is who we are now. That is who we choose to be." Outside, Earth spun in space, no longer hidden behind shields, open to the cosmos. And across the galaxy, 700 species looked to the Sol system with a new understanding. Humanity had slept while the galaxy forgot what they were capable of. Now humanity was awake, and they were showing the galaxy something new, what they chose to be capable of. Not conquerors, not tyrants, not monsters, sentinels, guardians, humans. And that, more than any weapon or fleet or strategy, was what made them truly dangerous. Because a species that could choose peace after being built for war was a species that understood both, and understanding both made them unbeatable. The long sleep was over. The new age had begun, and humanity would face it the same way they had faced everything else in their history, with determination, adaptability, and an absolute refusal to quit. Because that was what humanity did best. Not conquering, not destroying, but enduring, and always choosing what kind of endurance mattered most. They chose to endure for peace, and the galaxy would be better for it.